David, I call the member for Bonnie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Spit is a precious place for many Gold Coasters. It is a place known for its recreational and environmental value, somewhere that provides space to enjoy some of the best water access we have and the natural beauty that comes with it. There's not many things better than heading out there late on a summer afternoon, picking up some Pete's fish and chips from up the road, parking my ute alongside the rock wall, sitting in the tray and eating it while the sun sets. I don't think there would be a dog on the Gold Coast who hasn't enjoyed running around the off-leash section of the beach there. There is also an incredible array of marine life you can see snorkeling just off some of the diving platforms on the rock walls there. This plan outlines some much-needed investment into the future of this precious public space, and I applaud my colleague, the member for Surfers Paradise, whose electorate covers the vast majority of the Masterplan area, for continuing to call on the government to provide clarity over many years. I believe he was one of the first to call for a master plan way back in 2015. This process, however, has taken far too long, and many of the ideas in the plan are not new. Gold Coasters want certainty, and they want ideas like this to become a reality, not just to be proposed and slowly progressed. We desperately need the almost 2,000 jobs promised by this plan. The area I represent, particularly Labrador, has the highest unemployment rate on the Gold Coast, with it sitting electorate-wide at 9.6%. That means I represent over 3,000 people who do not have a job. They need projects like this to happen much sooner than on the current timeframe. Delays like this are nothing new. This same minister has carriage of the Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct, a similar big-picture state development project with a similar delivery timeframe set by the government of several decades. Delivery is a generous word to describe what's now strangely called Lumina. 2 years on, this precinct still remains empty. The only deal they have locked in for a site in the precinct is with Griffith University from across the road for the Adapt building. Every other site has no agreement for it. Labor always bring out grand plans with claims they will create thousands of jobs, but there is never any follow-through. We cannot allow the Spit Master Plan to be a repeat of that by this minister. We need development like this and the jobs that come with it. The concerns many people feel about the government's ability to carry this through in an economically viable way is also evident from the report into this bill. On page 12 of the committee's report, we read that submitters raise concerns that the bill does not outline a guaranteed ongoing minimum source of funding beyond the initial $60 million for the Gold Coast Waterways Authority to carry out its ongoing community infrastructure and public realm works and associated duties. There is an opportunity to raise significant revenue from the different elements of the plan, particularly the super yacht marina. But that needs to be managed appropriately and used to further the development of the plan and not just have it go into state coffers. Millions is already being raised from lease arrangements on and around the Spit, let alone the huge amount of registration fees collected from vessels who use the Broadwater. The growth in leases and other revenues from this area should be reinvested into managing these extraordinary assets. But what we see at the moment is not a good indication. The Gold Coast Waterways Authority budget was cut from $8 million in 2018-19 to $6.3 million in 2019-20. This important body is under-resourced. That budget is a pittance for the job they have to do. They only have 30 full-time staff to do it, and I do note that there's talk of them getting extra staff for this new role that they are undertaking, but it will not be enough. We need more dredging to make navigation safer and easier for boats and greater resources for the authority, for the Gold Coast Waterways Authority to manage unseaworthy vessels. You can't and shouldn't dredge the whole Broadwater, but there are navigation channels becoming more and more silted, which severely undermines the recreational value.
Minister. Member Bonnie, you have the call.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Navigation channels becoming more and more silted, which severely undermines the recreational value of these waterways for boaties. The designation of Curlew Island as an environmental reserve is a necessary step to protect this significant habitat, and I thank the committee for the recommendation and the minister for following up on that. It is a little misleading, though. The sandbanks next to the island, just off the Labrador shoreline, are the important roosting areas for these endangered birds. They have been there far longer than any person. Long before the seaway was completed and Waybreak Island was constructed, these sandbanks existed, as is evident even in aerial photographs of the Broadwater from decades and decades ago. The island itself is what has popped up over the last decade or so as vegetation has taken hold and sand has gathered around it. The debate on the merits of naming this island or not is separate to protecting this important part of the Broadwater. I note the Minister has indicated that it is now an environmental reserve with the trustee arrangements being worked out, and I hope that it takes into consideration the sandbanks and not just the island. In relation to dredging, this is not an area that requires dredging. It is not a thoroughfare. The channels around it, yes, they need a lot more work, but these particular sandbanks need to be protected because they have high environmental value. I recently caught up with the Gold Coast Waterways Authority CEO, Hal Morris, and I urged him to install signage on the island as soon as possible, as is outlined in the master plan, so that any visitors will be aware of how important this site is to birds listed as critically endangered by the Federal Environment Department. These areas fall just within my electorate, and I have been vocal for the need to protect the animals that call these sandbanks home in the warmer months of the year. Alongside local species like gulls and pelicans, there's a number of migratory birds that travel thousands of kilometres along flyways from the other side of the world. These include double-banded plovers, whimbrels, bar-tailed godwits, and the world's largest shorebird, the eastern curlew. The curlews are about a metre long with a 110 centimetre wingspan and their distinctive 20 centimetre bill shaped like a new moon. It's actually what their scientific name comes from, Numenius, or new moon, madagascariensis. They breed in the Arctic and travel over 10,000 kilometres to get to Australia's east coast, including to our little part of the Gold Coast, where current estimates are there are about 60 to 100 of them roost. On their way here, they'll only stop and rest every few thousand kilometres at places like the Yellow Sea's mudflats in China and Korea, the Philippines and parts of New Guinea. These birds are very shy, and when they're disturbed, they'll fly away, either to another feeding site or they'll just circle above until what they perceive as a threat has left. That, for our area, includes dogs, people fishing, kayakers, paddleboarders, boaties, and some of the daily tour groups that visit the area. When these birds have to fly unnecessarily, they burn energy. That gives them less to use on their migration, which, on a long journey of thousands of kilometres, can be the difference between life and death. I first became aware of these birds and their habitat when I met local conservationist and birdwatcher Bob Westerman a couple of years ago. I've gone out with him twice to see this area for myself with him in his little tinny. Bob is a retired TAFE teacher and passionate birdwatcher. He's been doing it for around 20 years, and he first noticed this roost while he was out with the Southport Volunteer Marine Rescue, and he knew immediately just how special it was. I asked him why birdwatching became so important to him. Why did he care so much about this little part of our Broadwater? He told me it was as he was grieving after the death of his first wife. Watching our local bird life helped him to get through that because it showed him that life was still going on. It literally gave him a reason to live. He's been advocating to protect this important part of our local environment for a decade since then. And even just this morning, Bob reported to me that his colleague had spotted 200 birds around Curlew Island, but within 20 minutes, a woman had brought her dog onto the island and scared the majority of them off. When those birds are disturbed, they end up in the air in a holding pattern between South Stradbroke Island and Curlew Island, which, as I mentioned, really cuts into their energy reserves. Global numbers are declining, but the Gold Coast numbers are holding strong. That makes it so important for us to protect this important habitat so that their numbers don't follow the same trend as we're seeing in other sites. And to conclude, Deputy Speaker, our Broadwater and the Spit are a stunning part of the Gold Coast and of Queensland. We need this investment to happen sooner to ensure that their future is preserved for generations to enjoy.
Thank you.